I realize I'm supposed to be studying, but Breaking Bad will always be relevant. The cold open is worth talking about, but I'm saving that for later. We pick up with Walt 3 weeks earlier, and the man can't sleep. He is wide awake in the middle of the night, staring into the ceiling. It is shown to us that he is an accomplished man with his prize for the contribution he made, but he doesn't look happy. He looks empty. His eyes look lifeless. We meet his wife, and for his birthday, she serves him this veggie bacon that looks lifeless in itself. Walt doesn't push back much, he just tries it. Soon after, we meet his son, Walt Jr. Walt Jr. really does a better job at pushing back against this veggie bacon, more than Walt did. Walt is a teacher. He seems to be one of those passionate teachers that really trying his best to make his class as interesting as possible. In the back, we have a student who's just fooling around, not listening. Some of the students have their hands on their chins. It looks like they're daydreaming. 8 minutes into the show, and it's the first time we see Walter smile. He's talking about chemistry, and that brings a smile to his face. But you can see some of the students don't respect him. They just fool around in front of him. Student goes on to disrupt the entire lesson, but Walt does nothing about it. He doesn't push back. To my surprise, Walt is working a second job. He's not just a teacher, but he works at a car wash too. At work, he has to deal with kids that don't listen. At his second workplace, he has to deal with his boss who goes back on his word. After having the longest day in history, he gets home and there's a surprise party for him. We meet Hank, his brother-in-law. Hank is waving his gun around, doing a show and tell. Hands the gun to Walt Jr. He's clearly not comfortable. He tries to say something, but his own son peer pressures him into taking the gun. Who respects Walter in this universe? Who respects Walter in this world? Hank gives this speech, and during the speech, he makes fun of Walt. He actually disses him. He's not done. He's not done. He goes on to take Walter's drink. I want to remind you that we are at Walt's birthday party. This is his party, this is his home, and Hank has become the center of attention because of this drug bust that he did. Just faded off into the background. Nobody can even see him. Eventually, Walt joins in and watches the drug bust, and it's the amount of cash that captures his attention at this point. And long and behold, Hank disses Walter one more time. Just come on a ride along and get some excitement in your life. How disrespectful that is to the man who's already working 2 jobs. I find this to be the inciting incident for Walter. Walter collapses at work. In the ambulance, when the paramedic asks him if they should contact anybody for him, his response is, God, no. God, no. What kind of people do you have around you in an event that you collapse, you faint, and you can't call any of them? Thought is, God, no. One of two things are true, or maybe more, but either the people around Walt are really horrible, or Walt just doesn't trust the people around him. Transition to these two beautiful shots where Walt is upside down, which almost communicate that whatever it is, his life has been turned upside down. The man wouldn't tell anyone that he fainted before he knew his diagnosis. We think he would tell his wife that he has cancer at the first opportunity he has. Anyways, Walt just doesn't tell her. He says his day was fine. No, but Walt strikes me as the type of person who was the firstborn child who goes on to be an only child. Pick up with Walt at the car wash, and this time he quits. He cusses out his boss and he leaves. He decides to call Hank to go on that ride along. Hank says a bunch of questionable things. I love that Walt shares his chemistry knowledge, but he tries not to look guilty. At this point, he hadn't done anything wrong. I just like that he tried not to look guilty for knowing phosphine gas. Hank drove around the corner. It's funny that Walt also put on his seatbelt. He just looks so out of place. where Hank opens his door first and then Steve opens his door a split second later. A cute detail that shows their dynamic. Hank is the leader and Steve is his comrade. A few seconds later, Jesse jumps out of a window. We don't know it's Jesse yet, but Walter recognizes him and he calls him Pinkman. The name Captain Cook is such a funny one for me because I feel it was foreshadowing Walt, or at least his destiny. Yeah, Hank pronounced it Captain Cook, and then Steve pronounced it Captain Cook. Interpretation of this, the first one, Captain Cook, clear and obvious, a captain that's cooking, or someone who cooks so well that they are the captain. And the second one, Captain Cook, like someone who's lying and cooking. I don't know it yet, but does it ring any bells? Walter goes to visit Jesse with a proposition. And up until this point, this is the most I've seen Walt feel comfortable in an environment. Relaxed, and he looks like he belongs, funny enough. And it's not lost on me that Walt actually spoke to Jesse the same way Hank speaks to him. The wheel just keeps turning. He suggests that they should work together. And he blackmails Jesse into doing it, of course. I don't know if I believe that Walt would really have turned in Jesse, but Jesse believes it, and that's what matters. And just like that, we're in business. So Walt goes to his school and he borrows some supplies. He goes back to Jesse's place. He suggests that they cook at Jesse's residence, and Jesse is smart enough to say no, rightfully so. As he gets this idea, he says, hey, let's get an RV so we are all elusive and stuff. We can just move about. We never fixed into one area. And Walt really took Jesse saying no personally because he goes on to remind him to say, hey, what you've been cooking is feces. Absolute excrement. No more chili powder. This is the first time we see Walt push back against something so strongly. And I don't believe it's because he has power over Jesse. I just think he pushes back so much because he believes and loves chemistry so much. He's not willing to see chemistry be decimated in this way. Walt has all the book smarts in the world, but street smarts are at an all-time zero. Openly admitted to Jesse that I knew you wouldn't amount to anything, but the very next opportunity, you withdraw all your life savings and you give it to this man. Oh, Walter's desperate, but this was shocking, even for me. Oh, Jesse, awesome. He says, dude, why are you doing this? What's going on with you? Just tell me so I know. And Walt says, I'm awake, which is funny because he can't sleep. I told you this man is not getting enough sleep. On a shopping trip, these kids are bullying Walter Jr. and Walter doesn't want to push back against them. He just leaves and he goes to the back. I assumed he was going to take some supplies the same way he did at school. But no, he just comes in through the front door and he just beats the living hell out of this kid. Okay, I may be exaggerating. He just kicked him and just kept him down for a minute. Skylar looked really scared and surprised at the same time. It just told me that Walt is really not a man of violence because she had never seen this side of him, hinting at the idea that Walt has never had a violent outburst, not even in private. Using the supplies that were donated by the school, Walter cooks the best math Jesse has ever seen. Now, I know nothing about math, but Jesse says this is art, it's class. He tries to smoke it right away. Walt, can you see the type of man you're dealing with? And Walt puts a stop to that. He says, look, we are not getting high on our own supply. We don't do that. This is for our customers. So Jesse has to find someone to sell this mat to. He visits Crazy 8, and Crazy 8 is out there training his dog. What is interesting is that the doll he's using to train his dog was dressed just like Jesse, and Jesse did not see this as a red flag. Anyways, he takes them on a ride along, I guess inspired by Walt's story. When confronted by Crazy 8, we see that Walt is not the world's best criminal because when a gun is introduced, he literally runs in a circle instead of running away. In that moment, Walt comes up with a lie. He tells Crazy 8, look, I'll teach you my recipe. I'll teach you how to cook art. So he takes Crazy 8 and Emilio into the RV. Now that was a genius lie because he uses that to knock them out with phosphine gas, the stuff he was talking about earlier. While he's driving away, he ends up in a ditch. Being caught up lands us back at the beginning of the episode. Walt makes a confession video, he takes the gun, and he actually tries to himself. If not for the safety, we would have lost Walt at this point. Even before his diagnosis, Walter was clearly dealing with a lot. Because who faces the law and then just decides, you know what, I'm done with this. At this moment, all Walt thought was, look, the cops are coming. I have 2 people who are knocked out at the back of an RV. I was cooking some drugs and I'm implicated, but I don't know, it just seemed like such a final decision, and he was going to do it if not for the safety. In fact, he did do it. But lucky for Walt, it's not the police, it's actually the firefighters, because Emilio thought it was a good idea to toss out a cigarette in the middle of the desert. Walt comes home way beyond his curfew, and Skylar gives it to him. You know, she just tells him, hey, you're not speaking to me. Where have you been? You shutting me out? Oh, the usual stuff. And the episode ends. And all of this was just in the pilot episode.